Wow, there we go. Hello, hello. Welcome, and let me know if you need anything, if you need the agenda links again in the chat. I'm happy to paste them. Cool. So, hi. Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome. I'm going to share my screen real quick if I can figure out how I'm doing that.
Is this the biggest community call we've had so far?
I think it's the most people and the most full agenda, actually. Yeah, I'm a little worried about getting through it all, but good problems to have. Thank you all for being so ready to share. That's the idea. Okay, let's see if I can. Yeah, hello, hello. Why can't I do both of these at once? Okay, I'm obviously still figuring out my share screen situation. However, let's just, yeah, here we go. Always the problem. You think I would have figured it out by now. There we go. Cool, great. So reminder, this is January 26th. Welcome, welcome to our first Jupyter community call of 2021. Woohoo! I'm Isabella. For those of you that may not have met me, I'm a designer. I like these calls because I think it's worth celebrating what we're doing around here and having people show off what they do. So thank you for taking the time to be here and welcome. I'm really glad to see so many people and so much enthusiasm on the agenda. It's very exciting. There are two things I want to mention really quick though, just so everyone knows. Community calls are recorded, so whatever that means to you, what you can and can't share, just keep that in mind. I'd also like to say we do follow a code of conduct because this is a Jupyter community event. You can find this at any time for any case that you need it. And keep in mind, this applies to me as well. So we're all here on the same terms. And that's all I need to do with that. But those are just my reminders, so I don't forget to tell you anything important. Now, I also want you to know, if you haven't been here before, what's going to happen is we have the agenda. I'm going to just go down those items kind of in order. And since though we have a lot of people today, I first wanted to ask, is there anyone who would be okay if we run out of time presenting partially next month that we can move to the end? And if not, that's okay. I'll just watch the time really closely, but just an offer.
Yeah, well, you can skip my presentation, put it to the end.
Okay, I would like to not. I don't want to make you do that. I just wanted to check if there was anyone, because I know sometimes it's hard for people to make these meetings, and so I try and get people.
In fact, I had some changes to make in the presentation, so okay. I would be all right doing it next month.
Okay.
To give me some time.
Awesome.
It's all right.
I'll still move it to the end if you haven't. Okay, yeah, thank you so much for doing that.
I would be comfortable being bumped as well if need be.
Okay, I'm hoping to not. I just know that sometimes when we discuss things, it takes a little longer and I don't like cutting off discussion.
If needed, I can do it, there's no problem.
Okay, great. Thank you all so much for your flexibility too. I did not anticipate this many agenda items. I may have to change the template so that we control it, but thank you, thank you. And in that case, I'm going to start going down the agenda. The first things that we have are like short reports, announcements, kind of celebrations. And the first person we have there is, I'm thinking, Frederic. I'm probably not saying that right, and I'm sorry.
No, it's correct. Thanks.
Awesome. Yeah, what is your announcement?
So the idea was to try to create a common place for people to manage extension for the Jupyter Lab, a bit like what's available for a Jupyter Notebook with and the extension repository. So the idea right now is just an offer for people that have hard time, don't have so much free time to manage their extension for the Jupyter Lab, to put it in an organization. And I will start to prepare stuff for having a clearer policy, because there is also some discussion that need to be done. Should it be part of officially or not of the Jupyter organization? So, but that will be in the future. But right now there is already the organization on GitHub, and there have been a couple of extensions already available and moving that organization, and hopefully more to come.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I am next on the announcements, actually. I just wanted to say, because we haven't had a call since, in case you missed it, Jupyter Lab 3.0 is out. Hooray! And thanks to everyone who did that. That was a lot of people working very hard, and I want to acknowledge that. So yay, congrats. I also wanted to say I've seen a resurgence in like worrying about and working on accessibility concerns, particularly in the Jupyter Lab community, because that's where I spend most of my time. And I wanted to thank the small group of people who are working on that. And also, since you're all here, invite you to our meetings. We meet every other week, but we happen to align this week. If you have any interest in accessibility, Jupyter Lab or not, feel free to show up. That's tomorrow at not quite the same time. It's at the time that this call will end tomorrow. So I'd love to see you there, but you're welcome. And now we have Lane. You have an announcement.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to say that the Plotly community is getting up on Jupyter Lab 3.0 and hopefully pre-building their extensions. It's been a pain to get those extensions installed in the past. They've had to do a lot of troubleshooting, and yeah, they're getting more open too. They're moving away from you can only run charts in their cloud and things like that. So it's just really good to see their support of the community.
Awesome. Thanks for letting us know. That sounds fantastic. Great. Does anyone else have some quick reports they'd like to throw in last minute? Okay then. Thank you so much. We're moving on to the agenda items yet. The first thing I noted was I saw Ross and Julian had signed up very early on the agenda, but I didn't see anything to present, and that's fine. I just wanted to check. I don't even know if they're here.
I'm here, yeah.
Oh, yes. Okay. Thank you. Do you have something that you want to present, or were you just signing up preemptively?
Not to present, not this time anyway. So I'm joining from Refinitiv, so as a product manager. We have a Jupyter Notebook, Jupyter Lab implementation that delivers quite a few financial calculations. So we're a bit like Bloomberg, effectively, data aggregator and data distributor with some analytics. And we just like to get more involved, basically. So I think this is probably our first step of dipping our toe in the water, figuring out what's going on. And we're contributing, I think, in the first instance, the Japanese translation. So hopefully we can help in some other areas too.
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad to have you here, and I hope you can be more involved as well. Sorry for calling you out. I just wanted to check since you were the first ones on the list, and I didn't want to make sure we skipped over you by accident. Thank you. Okay, then we are going, okay, then is it, okay, we can put that at the end. Loic, I'm sorry. We're moving to the end, so then that's Nick. You are up next.
Oh, I do get to talk. Hooray. Yeah, so I'll even turn my pictures on. Hi. I'm sitting here. It's lovely in Atlanta. January, lovely, right? No ice storms. So we have two things that I threw up on there. One is the Jupyter Lab LSP 3.x line supports Jupyter Lab 3. Works great. Less filling, all that stuff. We've done a couple releases now. The Conforge stuff is pretty solid. You can just ask for R and all that other stuff. It's fun. We got 8 big features that either refine or complement stuff that's already in the Jupyter Lab experience, but we add additional things like linting and all that kind of stuff. So big focus is on the eponymous or eponymous, I don't even know, Jupyter components, but we support lots of other servers as well, like LaTeX and Docker and all that other stuff. And then we've started the JEP process to get that created as an official Jupyter sub-project. There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot going on in the language server protocol, but we want those features. They'll be fun. The other one is, and if anybody else wants to jump in and talk about it more, JupyterLab 2.3.0 RC0 does a bunch of work with virtualized rendering of big notebooks that drives your main line of I'm looking at pixels down. And these changes are going to be landing in 3.1. They're ready to test. I put them under test and didn't find anything super broken, so that was exciting. But if you have an extension that does do a lot of heavy stuff in the notebook, trying it out with 2.3.0 RC0 will help them find the problems and avoid breakage. That's it.
Great. Thanks so much, Nick. Does anyone have any comments on that? Open for discussion. Okay, well, I think that sounds great. I hope you get good feedback and good progress on making that next release happen. Thanks for all your hard work.
Turn it on or off? Yeah, turn it off.
Okay. In that case, I'm looking through the list, and I think everyone else on the list today are people that said that they could go next month, but it doesn't seem like we need that right now. So I'm just going to return to the top of the list and go back to, is it Loic? Sorry. But it is your turn if you are ready. And if not, no, you said you wanted to go next month because you're preparing stuff. Sorry. Possible. Mixing things up. No, perfect. I will add you. I'll move your stuff over to the next agenda.
Thanks.
Okay, then we have Soren. Are you ready to go?
May I request to go later in the meeting?
Yeah, you can.
Thank you.
And in that case, Frederic, it is your turn.
Yes, so I can do something. Can I share my screen? Nope. Do you see my screen?
Yep, looks good. Well, we
Okay,
see
so,
the Jupyter Lab contrib, just so you know.
Yeah, okay, so that's just the website. So I'm making some advertisements same time. Sorry for that. And today I just want to speak about two extensions I recently developed and published on GitHub. That one is an alternative launcher for Jupyter Lab. Mainly what it's doing is that it's gathering the notebook and console inside only one card. And he has also the ability to have a table view that should come at some point on the GIF, or you can just check it out on the website. But I was wanting to speak about that one, so here's come the table, especially because with the new system to add extension in Jupyter Lab 3, it's now really simple to deploy those kind of extension, even if they are replacing a core extension. So basically, first you can directly publish on Conda or on PIP. So for the other extension I have done is Cell Toolbar, so you can directly just look and install them. So that will be, I think, a very nice feature for user to not have to think about two packages, one for the front end, one for the back end. Is everything will be in PIP or Conda, so that's really, really nice. So I will let it download all the stuff. And I will speak about what's nice also about Jupyter at 3. It's so the ability of being able to disable directly extension. So this is the package.json of this alternative launcher. And now it's possible directly in the extension to say that, okay, if you install this extension, you need to disable that launcher from the core Jupyter Lab. And this is done through configuration. And for the end user, it doesn't need to do any additional comments. So if I look at the README of the package, so basically for Jupyter 3, the user just need to type that and it will work. And if we compare for Jupyter 2, then it was another story. I mean, you need to use a specific installation process for the front end, and you need after that to disable the core extension. So that makes, I think, the user workflow to install extension very nice, and I'm really glad for all the work that the core developer has done for that. So thanks a lot. And the other one I want to speak quickly is also it brings back lots of discussion that was done at the beginning of Jupyter Lab. Is the idea of having some kind of cell toolbar in Jupyter Lab. So this is the first implementation. So if you look at the GIF, what you will see is that on the selected cell, you get some icon for transforming the cell from Markdown to code to delete them. And also you get the ability to tag, to add directly tag, and to visualize directly the tags inside the notebook. So that will make the life of the user much more easy, I think. And another side effect, I added some settings so you can provide the user with a default tag. So because lots of people know about parameters from Papermile, but if you have some process in which you have a keyword to hide tags and stuff like that, you can also add them, and that makes the life of your user also much better. But I have to say that now my user and my company are using it since 2 months almost. And so there is definitely still some UX problem, like currently the position of the cell is changing because of the appearance of that cell's toolbar. So definitely there is still some thinking to improve the design of that. And that's almost it for me. So I could launch the demo to finish if it works. So you get everything directly. So this is the new launcher. You can switch from tabs to cart. That would be nice, especially if, like me, you are using a Conda environment where the name for the kernel can become very long. And if I open just a small notebook, so this is the kind of thing you can see. So by default, there is only parameters as default tag, but you can add more than. So there is some interactor to add cells, to run directly as cells. And that will help people that don't know so much about the shortcut, the keyboard shortcut that are available, and that will, I think, help the people to use Jupyter Lab, especially the beginner with this kind of interface. So that's it for me. Thank you for listening.
That was awesome. Thank you for sharing. Does anyone else have something they'd like to say first? I know I can talk about this one.
Yeah, about the extension, the disabled extension. Does the extension need to be installed? Or?
What do you, in this case is just because I'm replacing something. If you have an extension that's an external one, I don't know.
Okay.
There will be people that know more. Maybe if Steven has time to comment on that, he knows much more about it.
Is the question whether the other extension has to be installed? The one you've disabled?
Yeah,
no, it'll mark it. It'll mark it as
an
disabled.
extension that you want to that you not need for Jupyter Lab Core, but you can install and is not compatible with your extension, and you want to disable the one that could be installed by the user.
Right. So if you mark something as disabled and it's not there, that just gets ignored. So it wouldn't result in an error.
Okay, great.
You've also got some positive comments in the chat too. People are very excited with both the launcher and the cell, which I have to say I've seen discussed before, and I think I've seen you in those discussions. Is this kind of where this came from?
Yeah, basically I look at what was there and I say, okay, I have some spare time between Christmas and New Eve, so let's do something about it. So thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is awesome.
This is Damian. Frederick, the tax thing is really, the launcher is really nice as well, but I'm really interested in the tax in the context of the price slideshow story. I can foresee people using price in the Jupyter price lab extension I'm working on right now that could potentially use that to actually select and make those cells in the specific slide they want. So that is great. I will use that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? I'll leave it quiet for a few seconds before moving on. Okay. Well, we also actually, I'm going to catch up a few more things in the chat. It looks like a lot of people are discussing details of this. So you've sparked quite a discussion. Thank you once again for sharing and taking some of your time off to make things. Oh, go on.
Oh, no, thanks.
Right. Great. Well, next I have Corentin.
Yeah, that's
awesome. Thank you.
Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yep, we're seeing Node Code Editor. Oh yeah, there it is.
IP spaghetti. Okay, so this is a project I started like a month or two ago, and maybe just before I present what I just want to present what is the intention of this extension. So usually when I work with notebooks, I'm myself a scientist. What I usually do is I create some global imports, and then I load some data, and then I modify the data, and then I plot the data, and then I modify the data again in a different way, and then I plot it again, and I do that over and over again. And eventually, at some point, I end up with trying to make, for example, a plot of the nth modification of the data and the mth modification, and it very quickly becomes quite untidy. So the way I usually try to fix that is through using headings. So whatever is in the same heading should be executed at the same time. But of course, it doesn't really work very well, because if you want to make the plots of the, for example, the first and the nth iteration of your modification of the data, you don't really know where to put that plots. So this is what my notebooks look like. But this is not what I would like my notebook to look like. What I would like them to look like is to initially have some global imports. This is my globals, and then load some data, and then have like different branches going out of my data with different modifications, and then different branches going out of my data to make, for example, to make some plots. So the way I think about my notebook is more in terms of graph than in terms of just a linear list of cells. And just to give you an idea of what it looks like, one of my notebook looks like this, and it's absolutely unmaintainable, and I have no idea which cell should go first, which cell should go at the end. And this is a problem I often find myself in. And then I realized that, well, Jupyter Lab is really awesome because you can very quickly create extensions. So I decided to create my own extension. Instead of complaining about the developers, let's try to do something about it. So what the idea I had was to think about processing my data and representing it in terms of graph, while leveraging all the power of Jupyter notebooks, especially having rich outputs and the ability to interact with Python or whatever kernel you have. And so to do that, I created the IP Spaghetti project. So the idea of the IP Spaghetti project is to represent your workflow as a graph, and each cell here is actually roughly equivalent to a classical Jupyter cell, except it's a function, just so that everything is encapsulated and you don't clutter your global namespace. And then you just connect the different cells all together. And if you use typing with Python 3.6 and over, you can also, well, you're only allowed to connect sockets that share the same types together, so that it really helps you to connect the stuff that goes together. And I can try to do a demo, but I'm usually cursed with demos, so it may not work at all. All right, so here I just created an IPEEK file because it's like a file format I came up with, which is pure Python, except you have some magic keywords all over the place. So I start with some globals, and then I define some functions, and whenever I have register node, it's a function that is going to become a node in the graph. And they are just Python functions, so you could execute them without the need of my package at all. And if you load that in the extension, okay, so I just do it. It asks me for a kernel. And then it fires up the kernel, it executes the globals. Yeah, there we go. And then, well, here it's a demo, so there's something that is already in it. And if you click on, for example, load data sets, you get the source code of your data sets. And oh, yeah, that's a glitch. So on the left side is what is the code of the function. On the right side is how it's going to be injected and executed in your kernel. And then you can pipe the output of this load dataset function, which is even here, for example, to here a function that is called projection plot. And if I click on run graph, it's going to execute my graph from left to right and take into account the dependencies. So whenever I change load datasets, all the things that are downstream are going to be marked as being dirty and have to be re-executed. And if I modify something downstream, it doesn't change anything upstream. So if I run it, I've got a blue thing that tells me, oh, it's running. And when it's green, it's done. And so here you see some outputs from whatever function is being executed. And for example, this one, it's a projection from astrophysical data sets because I'm doing astrophysics. And the nice thing is that if you can add nodes. For example, I can add, let's say I don't want to project along in this case, along the x-axis, I can ask it to project along the y-axis, and I just connect that here. Poof. And if you look at the code that is going to be executed, now axis is equal to y, and if I run it, I get a different projection. So instead of projecting along the whatever axis it was, now I'm projecting along the x-axis, the y-axis, sorry. Yeah, and well, I guess that's more or less all the things that I wanted to say. So the idea is to try to really, like all the things that I'm showing here on screen are just pure Jupyter Lab widgets, except for this graph, of course, because well, there's no graph. And I'm still very much in an exploratory phase, so any comment would be welcome.
Quick question: does the right-click create new view for output work on your number 7 there on your money plot?
So it's I would hope it works. It doesn't work.
Ah!
No, but that's one thing I would like to add support for. I don't know why it doesn't work, but I don't know how it's supposed to work. So it's internally it's just a code cell which I imported from Jupyter Lab. So I was expecting it to work, but it does not. I'll have to investigate why.
Yeah.
But in principle, you can have any kind of rich output here, for example, widgets or things like that.
What happens if you drag it? Can you drag it out of there?
Then you just get the PNG.
Oh, just the okay. It's still good though. You can still get it out. All right. I mean, frankly, somebody raised the issue that they didn't like Jupyter Lab because it overloaded that. Sorry, not the dog park. They didn't like Jupyter Lab because it got rid of that context menu that gave you the copy of the picture, right? Because if you're just trying to make some slides or something, you just want that picture. Bummer. Awesome demo. Thank you.
A public service announcement, because that's come up enough times. Shift and right click will give you the native one. Some people might not read that in the Jupyter Lab context menu. We put a note there, but it still is not that discoverable.
An idea that comes to mind, I'm reading a book on Dask right now, and this is obviously a direct acyclic graph. It would be cool to construct Dask workflows this way. And the nice thing about a DAG is that there's only one way to traverse it. So this kind of gets it's something to satisfy the critics that say Jupyter is like nonlinear execution, like you can define things and that aren't used or things like that.
Yeah, definitely, because once you represent your workflow as DAG, you can imagine parallelize it in using Dask or leveraging other libraries that I don't think about. Which is one of the reason I wanted my the source code of this graph to be Python only, so that you can just reuse it with whatever Python library you have, and you just have to parse the graph and give it to, for example, to Dask. that would be really cool.
Also, I think your demo went great, but I'm glad it worked since you're worried.
Yeah, well, I'm surprised it's worked. Yeah, and I just forgot to mention. I just sent the link to the repo on the chat. I would be really keen to have some kind of feedback if you want to raise an issue about something that you would think would be great. I'd be willing to have that included somehow if I find the time to do it in parallel of my job.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Does anyone else have any questions? We're still doing really good on time. Y'all are impressive. Well, okay then. Thank you. We can always come back to things if you want. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love seeing y'all's demos. This is so great. Thank you for taking the time to share. Looping back up, Soren, are you ready now? I think you said you're waiting.
Yes, give me just a second, and I will make sure I can share my screen here.
No problem.
All right, so I want to quickly demo a. People should see my screen.
Just started. Gene Pattern Notebook.
Sure. I just want to quickly demo a Jupyter Hub extension and configuration that we've been working on called Notebook Projects. And there are a couple driving use cases for this, but one of the primary ones is that we want our users to be able to load up a Jupyter environment pre-configured with whatever data science or bioinformatics tools they need. Furthermore, we want them to be able to install their own packages and customize the environment to suit their methods. We also want them to be able to do this for multiple environments or workflows without having to manage conflicting dependencies or other technical minutiae. Our users are primarily scientists, so we want them to be able to focus on the science, and we want this in a user-friendly interface. Okay, that's a lot of things. But I should note that we've set up our hub for bioinformatics, but it's generalizable to most domains, whatever you're working in. So what you should be seeing here is my login screen. This is just the Jupyter Hub login page with a theme put on top of it. We've got our own authenticator, but when we log in, we'll be brought to what we're calling the Notebook Projects page, and that's going to be the core of what I'll be showing off here. So on this page, you can view your existing projects, search through them, create a new one, or do other management tasks. And to launch one, I just click on it. You can see that will start up a Jupyter instance here. So every notebook project is essentially its own Jupyter server running any Docker container, each with its own environment, including locally installed dependencies and other components. So you can see there's some extensions here. Behind the scenes, each project essentially consists of three things. One, a working directory for your notebooks and other files, and this includes your Jupyter profile and user installed packages. Two, this directory gets mounted into a Docker container chosen from among a white list of available images, and the image is chosen when you first create the project. And three, kind of switching back here, each project has some metadata, such as a name, a description, tags, and the Docker image that was chosen. And you can see some of that here. You can also edit any of it after creation by going to this gear menu here and selecting edit. And you can change all that there. You can also, the gear menu also lets you start, stop, or delete a project. So to implement this, we're using bits and pieces developed by the Jupyter community. Each project corresponds to a server using Jupyter Hub's named server API. And when you launch a project, we're using Swarm Spawner to spin up, spin down, and otherwise manage Docker containers. The project page contemplates making use of the services API to handle repair and some other management tasks. And I should note that what you're seeing here is a work in progress. We're going live with this in a few weeks in our workspace. In the future, we're planning to extend this functionality. Namely, for us, notebook projects are going to become what we're going to use as the unit of notebook publishing and sharing. This means that users will be able to share projects with each other and even make them public. And this is useful since the projects essentially encapsulate a directory. They come with all of the dependencies and supporting files necessary for the contained notebook. And that's a problem we've noticed our users have had in the past, where they get a notebook and then they have missing packages, or they need to figure out what version of a particular library was installed to reproduce the results. And in this case, they can just load up the project and run. So maybe I went through that kind of quick, but that about sums up the demo I have for today. If you want to look at any of the code, it's all open source on GitHub. Our organization is called Pattern. So you can just pull up github.com/genepattern, and you should be able to find what you're looking for. Cool. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for sharing. I'm going to link that in the chat since you gave that to us. Yeah, that's awesome to see.
Have you considered any use of Binder for notebook environments and solving that challenge?
We've considered Binder, but at least for our use case with our users, Binder essentially means launching from a Git repository, and a lot of our users try to do things without a lot of direct coding. So this allows a more persistent workspace without the need to rely on Git commits and stuff at the back end.
I know you talked about it a little, but do you have anything you'd be willing to add about some of the problems that users were having that instigated all this work? Or is that kind of everything?
Yeah, I can talk a bit about that. So we're working in a domain really where we have a mix of people who are, say, bioinformaticians who are very good with coding and the command line stuff, and we also have people who are bench biologists who are very good at the science of what they're working on, but they're not primarily programmers. Maybe they can hack out a line of R or two, but that's about the extent of their programming experience. So one of the things we're trying to do is we're trying to make this very obvious for people that fit that full spectrum, so that they can work together and launch things. So it's not what I demoed today, but we do a lot of widgets so that they can just point and click and run their workflows without having to directly write the code themselves. And this is a way to ease the management of environments and dependencies for users in that full spectrum without having to do a bunch of creating content environments or something like that from the command line.
Right, that makes sense, especially, I mean, it's useful for everyone, but especially if they're trying to collaborate with each other, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, we've found it, at least in a lot of these labs we work with, the bioinformaticians end up becoming a bottleneck because they have the coding experience necessary to run these things, and it helps basically remove that bottleneck so that hopefully, everyone can run their analyses and do that.
You also have a question in the chat asking if it supports Jupyter Lab.
So we do have a Jupyter Lab version that's currently in beta. It doesn't have a full stable release yet, but that should hopefully be coming in the next month or two. If you pull up our GenePattern notebook repository, you can find it. There's a branch called Lab, which is the Jupyter Lab support.
Very exciting. Gonna leave it for a few seconds for anyone else to comment. Oh, you have another question already. Do you have plans to integrate Voila?
Yes, I've actually been working on that very recently. We do a number of widgets that we've made work with Voila very recently, and we're trying to figure out, or currently experimenting with how best to integrate that into our setup, and just different use cases for that. But yes, that is actively underway, Voila integration.
Yeah, we would also have a question. We also have a Jupyter Hub instance at ESRF, and we struggled a bit with the installation of extension, Jupyter Lab extension. So do you think your project would help in that?
Help with Jupyter Lab extensions?
Yeah, because you said that, from what I understood, each project has its own Docker image or its own Jupyter server, right?
Yeah, so it should, in theory,
You didn't really looked into it.
Yeah, that's something that's actively under investigation, and we have this Jupyter Lab version that's currently in beta. I'm up this week updating it, trying to update it for Jupyter Lab 3 compatibility, since Jupyter Lab 3 just came out, yay. And I'm actually really happy with some of the different ways that extensions can be packaged in 3. So I'm looking forward to that. It fixes some of the tricky parts that I ran into with earlier Jupyter Lab 2 support. And I see one comment here about a good in-notebook genome browser with track support. Actually, there's a project out there called IGV that has a Jupyter integration. It's pretty good for a genome browser with track support. It's not my project. I just wanted to recommend it since it's something I've worked with in the past, and it does a pretty good job.
Would you mind linking that? I'm not sure I found the right thing.
Sure thing. I'll paste a.
Oh, thank you. Oh, maybe Carol did.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Wonderful. Anybody else? We're doing great on time. A miracle, y'all. Okay, well, I am reviewing the agenda, and I think somehow we've actually made it through everyone on here who wants to present this month. So if anyone has any more discussions they want to bring up, or a very impromptu discussion or demo, that's welcome now. If not, I can wrap up, but yeah.
I just want to say a quick thank you to Isabella for resurrecting these meetings and having just a great turnout and great demos today from everybody who presented. So I'm really excited and energized by the meeting. So thank you.
Thank you. That's very kind. I really appreciate it. These meetings, I think they're really important. So I'm really glad to see other people thinking they're important too and taking the time to show up and share, because I know I'm asking a lot of people also. So thank you all for being here. Jason mentioned Q&A with everyone. Do you mean just in general, any questions that people have? I'm happy to do that. I don't know what questions.
We can have a 15-minute reception now that the meeting's over.
Yeah,
Sounds like
we
a good
can.
idea.
I will be here.
We could do breakout rooms. If anybody wants to do that, so that there could be smaller discussions. It's a big room. I don't know who has control over that.
I think I do. I just don't know with like recording. Do I stop recording for that? I don't know how that works when we break out. Yeah.
Something for next time. How's that?
Okay.
I think stop recording and we'll just have an informal discussion with whatever people want to say and ask and whatever for a few minutes.
Awesome. Well, I will throw out a few links really quick then, just in case, no, that's good. Awesome. I will stop recording. Thank you so much, everyone. And what was it? Why is the stop recording always harder to find than anything else?